Hello and welcome to episode 128 of PubShorts. And this one is called Another One Bites the Dust. And there's a reason why we are calling it. Tony will explain. But my name is Dr. KK. I'm the Innovation Officer at Inago. And Tony will explain everything about himself as well as a
Well,
podcast as
as
well.
always, I will be delighted to do so. Good morning and hello, everyone. I'm Tony O'Rourke. Welcome to Pub Shorts, which is a regular podcast KK and I record where we talk about stories relating to the world of academic research and publishing. And we like to give every episode a musical theme. Today's episode is called Another One Bites the Dust, which I'm sure the world will know is a Queen song. And we call this episode Another One Bites the Dust because the title and theme fits perfectly into the topics we're talking about today. Rules around changes in preprints, mass retractions, dodgy data sets, predatory journals, a reminder that weak papers and bad actors keep dropping as integrity checks tighten. And all credit to Mr. James Butcher for possibly the easiest pub shorts title we've ever had to think of.
Excellent. Thanks, Tony. I'm shifting to the first story. It is regarding preprints, and we have a pronunciation question that we were discussing before the show. So you can call it either SOC archive or SOSH archive. So I'm going to call it SOC archive. So the story's title, SOC archive submission rule changes. So if you have been keeping up, archive has changed its submissions, especially if with related to AI generated papers as well as mathematics because of the sort of deluge of AI generated papers, low quality papers. So SOC archive is also experiencing a surge in submissions and making the workload for volunteer moderators difficult to manage. The platform is receiving a high volume of non-research spam and AI generated content, which is obviously time consuming to assess. So the lack of moderation workflow tools means all moderators review all papers, increasing the need for narrow acceptable subjects. And to manage the increased moderator burden, SOC archive, as listed in this article, is implementing two rule changes with more possible rule changes if volume continues to rise or it is unmanageable. The first one is obviously the requirement for the authors to have an ORC ID or ORCID. The second one is obviously the focus on social sciences, which is fairly straightforward. Coming behind, I mean, in the sense, just after the archive related changes, I think Tony, we covered a couple of episodes ago. What are your thoughts? I mean, isn't this something that every preprint server would probably need to implement? And how would you sort of expect preprint servers to improve the overall screening efficiency?
Good question. First of all, every preprints are increasing in, I think, their standing. There's no question, and in certain, and we've already discussed this in previous episodes, in certain topic areas like physics, for example, in areas like very niche areas like high energy physics or condensed matter physics, but particularly high energy physics. The preprint is the first thing and the last thing that a researcher looks at. The journal is kind of almost like a by the way. The journal is what you cite, or at least it used to be, but what you read is the preprint. I think most preprints, or many of the preprints I've been talking to, have been seeing an increase in submissions. But as has been described here with SOAK Archive, that comes with issues relating to quality, integrity issues around the paper. So we've been working with a particular preprint provider, and it's not live yet, so I can't say too much. Who are looking to improve who have already got a very rigorous screening process, but are looking to automate that, or at least aspects of that in some way. And that's because volumes have just been increasing. Rather than having to bring in even larger armies of staff to deal with the processing, because there's no funding involved with preprints generally, at least from an author perspective. So they have to manage that incoming volumes with the resources that they've got. So and that allows them to do the kind of screening that would be essential here for SOAK Archive. Getting rid of papers that are just not relevant, out of scope. Maybe they're advertising, or it's defamatory material, perhaps, and a whole range of checks. So our Inago Reports product, and we've extended actually, and Kate, a lot of this thanks to you and the work that you've done, as you know, because I need to tell you. We've extended it so we now can offer something like 150 checks, and many of which are directly applicable to things like preprints or conference proceedings, where there's no traditional peer review process, but there's still a screening process going on.
Right. Excellent. So if a preprint server, somebody from preprint server is listening to us, how can they find more about this
We would
development that.
love to hear from you. We would love to hear from you. And we've got, an example to give, and we'd be happy to share with that preprint provider.
Right.
And they just need to contact me directly at tonyo@inago.com. Or they can go to the inago.com website, of course, but I think talk to me directly first, and I'll be able to point them in the right direction.
Yeah, Tony, I think you'll get a lot of emails after this. So watch out for your
Good.
deluge of emails. You probably need a screening
A
automation.
Christmas present of emails.
Yes, so moving on to the next story, and this is what we titled the episode after. This is the Journalogy special episode titled Another One Bites the Dust. Thanks, James, for suggesting this title. So this, obviously, Journalogy newsletter is Tony and I, my favorite, I guess, academic STM publishing newsletter. And a lot of the stories that we eventually end up discussing are also featured in this newsletter. So thanks, James, for doing the wonderful work. So the newsletter, this particular edition, discusses the delisting of the journal, The Science of the Total Environment by Web of Science. It also touches on the scientific reports and potential issues that it might face. Scientific reports is another journal. So let's talk about the science of the total environment. So the former editor-in-chief of this journal significantly increased the journal's publication output during his tenure, but he published a substantial number of papers, including many in the journal that he edited. So there should not have been any but there. But Elsevier stated that the editor has stepped down, and that the systemic problems in the journal and the entire publishing process led to the delisting, and not solely one individual. So you can see some of the spikes that are associated. So now it's been delisted, as James's graphic shows, and so this is the main story. I mean, and we've already covered Helion and Curious. Both have been in different ways delisted, and James has covered them extensively. So, what are your thoughts on this in terms of potential editorial misconduct that we don't have the clarity regarding anyway?
Well, I have a real issue with this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm sure there have been things that have happened within the editorial process which could be improved. But come on, this is a journal that has been consistently publishing thousands of papers,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not, they're not just one-offs. These are papers, these are authors who are repeating to use a journal because it provides a value.
Mm-hmm.
By delisting the journal, I think in some way it kind of, I personally think it undermines the work that the editors and that the team have done there. So, yes, there have to be rigorous controls, of course, and if there's anything that might be could be highlighted as ways of improving their process, of course, then the publisher will need to do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I am concerned at this,
Right.
because you don't just get submissions don't just happen overnight. Researchers think very carefully about where and why they want to submit the paper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, in the previous special edition related to Helion and Curious, I think James himself, I think, wrote saying that we need to have more clarity as to what happened and what are the problems for which such delistings has been done. So that's something that I mean, we all need more transparency, but at the same time, I guess if there is research integrity or some concerns related to editorial integrity, that might also be needed. That needs to be assessed. But as you rightly said, the authors who trust these journals, especially such a big journal such as Curious, in terms of medical submissions and everything, that's something that everybody needs to take care of. Any further thoughts on this story, Tony?
No.
Okay. Moving on to the next one, we have, I think, a bunch of Springer Nature related stories. The first one, research integrity audits a routine checkup for journals. So I think this is earlier this month, Springer Nature has established an assurance team within its research integrity group, which is called Springer Nature Research Integrity Group. This conducts audits of journals to review how research integrity policies and procedures have been applied. The audits are independent and are benchmarked against internal policies and industry standards like COPE. They assess the entire submission to publication processes to reduce risks, identity improvements, and share best practices. A case study is also described, which involved 4-month audit of the journal Curious, Journal of Medical Science, which is something that we just discussed, which is also very sort of curious and why that has been done after Springer Nature acquired it. Yeah, you were saying, Tony.
I was just enjoying your pun.
Yes, the audit has confirmed that Curious has robust controls but identifies areas of refinement. So this comes after obviously the controversy regarding the delisting of Curious. So improvements were made to clarify processes for authors and reviewers regarding ethics, consent, and conflicts of interest. And terminology related to academic channels was clarified to prevent misconceptions about rigor and bias. And channel governance, I mean, this is something that I think was talked about last year when the Curious story initially broke. So, because channels through which the submissions came in had a lot of, let's say, integrity related issues. So, this type of channel governance was strengthened with additional vetting of institutions and staff documented in written guidance. And finally, this entire story indicates, as the article indicates or emphasizes, that research integrity is an ongoing effort. We all know that, and audits are crucial for maintaining reliability. So this is, I mean, I just wanted to sort of discuss the fact that publishers like Springer Nature are putting in such efforts to for research integrity, and that is, I mean, that's probably a theme throughout the publishing industry going forward in terms of dedicated teams and dedicated applications for screening for research integrity. Would
Yeah.
you agree with me? Yeah.
I would, and it's clear that publishers like Springer Nature, Springer Nature, was kind of leading the way in terms of the practice and rules and processes in place. I read their annual report last year, or earlier this year, where I can't remember. They said they were running something like 90 different AI based routines within their organisation to support the whole process of managing research integrity. So they're clearly doing some fantastic things, and and all credit to them for this. I think this is again, it reinforces the need for rigor in the research integrity process, and so kudos to Springer Nature.
All right, another Springer Nature story. As I said, there are three. So, new collaboration empowers thousands of researchers to share research methods, improve reproducibility, and drive global scientific progress. So, Springer Nature and Research for Life have expanded their partnership, and researchers, Tony, in over 90 low and middle income countries will get free or low cost access to premium features of protocols.io, which is
Oh, okay.
Springer Nature tool for sharing research methods and protocols. This aims to make research more reproducible and transparent, and it
Yeah,
also supports open access and open science best practices. Now, eligible researchers only can access these features via the Researcher for Life portal, and Springer Nature has a history of partnering with and contributing to Research for Life, and this partnership aims to
yeah,
reduce barriers to knowledge and support global research, which is great,
yeah.
wonderful in terms of, especially, I mean, I'm coming representing the global South here, so it's a good news. So another sort of good sort of step forward by Springer Nature in terms of research integrity and
I
methods.
think it's
Yeah.
it's an evolution in the process. Publishers like Springer Nature have been involved in research for life for many years. I mean,
Yeah.
when I worked directly in publishing in the noughties, we were one of the earlier adopters of the research for life program because we appreciate the importance of being able to um, I won't say democratize, that's an overused word, but to share knowledge with the researchers who actually really were not in a position to be able to access or acquire that
Mhm.
knowledge through some funding issues or whatever. And extending that to research protocols as well is a great step forward.
Right. And now on to some bad news for Springer Nature. This is from Transmitter. The first time I think we are covering a story. So this is titled "Exclusive Springer Nature Retracts Removes Nearly 40 Publications That Train Neural Networks on quote unquote bonkers data set." I love it. Springer Nature is obviously retracting these. The data set, apparently, Tony, contained images of children's faces downloaded from autism websites. This raised
Oh
concerns
gosh, right.
about
Yeah,
consent and reliability of the data.
yeah,
Dorothy Bishop, an emeritus professor, called the data set absolute bonkers. That's why the title. And Tim Kirschges stated that 5 papers have been retracted and 33 more are planned. And this data set
yeah,
uploaded to Kaggle by a researcher who defended the use of early autism detection. And eventually, that Kaggle, the platform where it was uploaded, removed the dataset for violating terms of service. But eventually, the researcher uploaded it onto Google Drive. At least
yeah,
90 publications citing versions of this dataset exist, and other publishers like the IEEE and Wiley are also investigating the papers which have studies based on this dataset. And the experts who comment on this emphasize that facial features cannot diagnose autism. Clinical assessment of behavior is the standard, and research on facial features and autism is valid but requires carefully collected consented data. Obviously, this such a research integrity concern, and I mean, I don't know what to say. I mean, it's good that people from Springer Nature are speaking up about this, and at the same time, we need probably. I mean, apart from all the other screening things that we have already sort of detected, data integrity, even image integrity, and everything, that needs to be assessed. And peer review should have taken care of most of these things, but somehow it has slipped through.
Well, I think there are two things. I think I don't want to talk too much about the data set, but clearly there was an education issue here, in that the author should have been aware that faces can't be used in any kind of data set without express permission of the author. He may or may not have that permission. I don't know. But the one thing I will say specifically about this paper is that, I don't necessarily think this is a bad news story. I think this is
Mm.
another good news story in a sense that it shows how seriously publishers are taking papers that potentially require retracting. I think it only adds to the I think the perceived value of papers. If papers are not being presented in the right way or the most legitimate way, then they get retracted.
Mm.
And I think although it's a shame that these papers are retracted, of course, but I think it reinforces the whole process in an academic rigor in academic publishing.
Right. I think we are ready to move on to the next story, which is from Science. This is titled Journal Retracts Weed Killer Study Backed by Monsanto, citing serious ethical concerns. So I guess nobody's unaware of the ethical concerns related to Monsanto funded studies. So the journal Regulatory Toxicology and Pharmacology has retracted 2000 paper that claimed a Roundup, a Monsanto weed killer.
Let's just hang on. Let's just be clear. It hasn't retracted 2,000 papers.
Yeah,
It was a
yeah.
paper that was written in the year
Yeah,
2000.
published in
Okay, but
the
just to be clear,
yes, yes. This retraction happened over 8 years after internal Monsanto emails reveal employees helped ghostwrite the paper. So the concern is ghostwriting, obviously, and the journal cited serious ethical concerns and questions about the researchers' integrity. Nothing more to say except the fact that their analysis showed that the paper remained highly cited even after the ghostwriting was initially pointed out, and internal documents showed Monsanto executives discussing using ghostwriters for papers to counter findings from International Agency of Research on Cancer. So there are some controversies. I mean, it's not just the ghostwriting itself; it is the potential conflict of interest that is being discussed here. Any thoughts on this, Tony? Before we move on to quick
um,
hits.
I don't want to talk about the conflict of interest. I don't know enough about the conflict of interest to make any comment. But I will say, ghostwriting is a reality in academic publishing. Whether we like it or not, it's quite common in the medical space for a third party to be involved in the generation of the words that will then be used to describe the research. I think what we have to see more of is greater um, clarity and information about who's involved in that paper. Even if a third party writer is involved, then unfortunately that organization that's behind the research will need to
Mhm.
disclose that.
All right, moving on to quick hits. We have five. The first one, a research integrity conference hit with AI generated abstracts, which is very ironic. It is the World Conference on Research Integrity, for which, Tony, we submitted a couple of abstracts and one of them got accepted provisionally, that is. So it is of nobody's like surprised with the fact that AI generated abstracts are very common. But the irony is that it is a World Conference on Research Integrity, and apparently after using Pangram, they detected a lot of abstracts with, I forget, with scores over 20% of AI generated content along with travel grant applications. So this combination is what we are looking for. Are you amused at the story that a conference on research integrity has research integrity, filled so
I'm
much?
amused at this of the irony of such a thing, but I'm not surprised. And
Mm.
increasingly, AI is being used to generate abstracts and summaries, and increasingly difficult to identify.
Right.
So I'm not surprised at all, but I'm pleased it's been highlighted and it's been discovered.
Right. Moving on to the next story, it is also related to. So, sorry, these two are related to each other. So this is the same story, but from an
Yeah.
age perspective. So moving on to the next one. This one is
Well, actually, sorry. Just go back to
mm,
the previous story.
yeah.
This story, perhaps the headline is a lot more clear in terms of it's not just the summaries. It was actually the peer
Oh yeah,
reviews,
right,
the
right.
reports were written by AI,
Right,
which
right. So
is far more
I think,
fundamental.
I misspoke, and this is a different story. So let me read my quick notes. So this story is called Major AI Conference flooded with peer reviews written by fully by AI. So this is 21% of the submitted peer reviews were entirely generated by artificial intelligence, with
Wow.
over half of the submissions showing signs of AI use. This issue came to light after researchers noticed suspicious patterns in peer reviews, such as fabricated citations and overly verbose, unhelpful feedback, prompting an an
Yeah.
investigation by Pangram Labs, which is also the AI vendor which was used in the previous conference, as in to analyze the submissions. So Pangram analyzed all the submissions and reviews for the International Conference on Learning and Representations (ICLR) in the conference for 2026, and confirming the widespread use of AI in a way that has deeply frustrated academics, and is now leading the conference organizers to review the policies to implement automated checks to ensure adherence to guidelines. So the thing is, ICLR is the front runner in terms of, I guess, finding out, or rather publishing research related to how to use AI in peer review responsibly. And it is
Yeah.
again ironic that in that conference you have a lot of AI related submissions. So
Yeah,
uh,
and listen, I don't have any issues at all about AI being used in peer review. In fact, we're developing as you know, we're
mm,
developing a product that's going to do that. It can help publishers with that process. But what we're not saying is that it completely replaces human peer review.
mm,
I think if these peer reviews were written by AI and there was some kind of human oversight involved in the process, then maybe it would be less of an issue.
right.
The fact is, it's these things have already done identified. These issues have been identified. It makes me wonder about the process that was used to create those reports, whether there was any human oversight at all.
Yeah, as you rightly said, peer review assistance is, as an assistance in peer review by AI, is not the problem. It's about non-human supervised and basically low quality content that's just submitted for the sake of submission.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Moving on to the next story, which I started covering before Tony pointed out that I had missed, or rather mistakenly assumed that one story was related to another. So this one's from Retraction Watch. Iraqi journal suspected of coercion. Two others dropped from major citation databases. So Scopus has removed these three Iraqi journals, a setback obviously for Iraq's academic standing. So one of the journals, the Medical Journal of Babylon, I love the love the journal title, the Medical Journal of Babylon, was also removed from Clarivate's Web of Science. Allegations surfaced that the Medical Journal of Babylon was forcing students to cite its own articles to graduate, and this is considered obviously scientific misconduct. And we have heard stories from the Middle East in terms of so students from universities being asked to cite their own university journals. So these are all citation malpractice related ones, and
Yeah,
obviously research
yeah.
integrity concerns. So to keep an, I mean, I think I've seen like four stories in the last 3 months or so in relation to this. So this is Middle East being a potential research integrity sort of like a focus point is something that, I mean, that also sort of indirectly indicates that there needs to be research integrity education, this AI related ethics education, that is sort of a gap in these areas. Any further thoughts on this, Tony?
I think this highlights the fact that there are global rules that need to be adhered to. I don't criticize the journals themselves in wanting to increase the desire to want to increase the visibility for their journals.
Hmm.
The process of getting there is clearly the challenge, and they don't have the kind of international reach where they're getting international non-native citations, so they're looking for alternatives. That's the sad thing. If they could find platforms, ways of improving the international dissemination of their papers, maybe they might get more citations from outside of their own institutions.
All right, moving on to the next story, second last wicket, the case of the fake references in an ethics journal. So this is basically
Fake references in an ethics journal. That's wonderful.
yes, I mean, we have a lot of ironic titles. So, an independent researcher discovered fake references while researching a whistleblowing case, and the researcher found that at least 19 of the paper's 29 references were fabricated, meaning
Good Lord.
obviously that they do not exist, and the use of AI like ChatGPT is likely to be the case. So, anyway, there's a lot of such instances, and that's the reason why, Tony, a lot of publishers are asking you if we can offer some technologies to detect fake references, have hallucinated
Oh
references.
yeah,
Yeah.
and this is one of the biggest use cases for our Naga reports products.
Hmm.
KK, we have publishers now who are very specifically saying, this is a major issue. We need tools that will help us to quickly and accurately identify fake references as they appear, whether they're retracted, whether there's a DOI in place, kind of a live link, whether it's an author citing him or herself
Hmm.
too many times, maybe where there's a bias in a particular journal or a particular publication or a particular conference. If there's any unusual patterns in the references,
Yeah.
tell us and screen it quickly so we can then find a way of resolving it.
Right. This journal is published by Spring NH and it's investigating the case. So this is the fourth related story that we are publishing. So I think we should probably have a word with Tim about our screening technologies, Tony, so that we can move that conversation forward. And next, finally, the last one. It is from Cabell's The Source: Anatomy of a Predatory Journal email. I mean, out of all the stories that I've covered, this looks like a story that needs its own episode in terms of how to identify predatory journals. So predatory journals, obviously, they're fake sort of scam sort of a journals. If the comparison drawn is the Nigerian prince scam, which obviously all of us have received emails from Nigerian princes saying that we have a lot of money that they could
What?
send.
They're not real.
Yes, Tony, that's
I'm
unfortunate.
waiting for my check for $5 million.
Yeah, so they are similar predatory journals, that is, and so the art of sort of finding out if it's a predatory journal depends on a lot of different signals, including the email content itself. It's like poor design, color choices issues, spelling and grammar error issues, and outdated deadlines, and a WhatsApp number. And legitimate publishers are unlikely to have such basic errors, and some examples are also given. So it's a wonderful sort of case study. And I suppose, Tony, I have somebody ringing my doorbell for the last 5 minutes, so I have to quickly pivot to the end screen. Sorry for that. This brings us to the end of episode 128 of PubShorts. So, Tony, I'll have to say a quick goodbye, an Irish goodbye to you. I'll see you in the next one. Bye, Tony.
See you next one.